I'm Drew and we're in my sewing room. Today I'm going to be working on a top that I am calling modern meets vintage meets historical fashion, even though it's from McCall's early spring 2021 line. I've already done a dress from this collection that was completely on the other end of the spectrum, super modern with these cutouts on the side of the stomach, very sexy. It was a very fun make. I will put a link up here to that video in case you want to check it out. I've never linked anything up here before, but I'm determined to figure it out, and now that I've said it, I'm gonna have to hold myself to it. For today, this is completely different from that one. It is a super cool top. I hope you enjoy seeing the view that I selected. This top has a few different ones, as well as my fabric choice, button choice, and process of sewing it up. And if you do like it, then remember to give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in seeing any more of my misadventures in sewing, then please feel free to subscribe. And with all of that said, let's get into the sewing. So I have the pattern all printed out and taped together. This is my second time using a McCalls digital pattern, and this time it went together a lot easier than that previous attempt, but it was definitely time consuming. So if you choose to make this top and use the digital pattern, that is something definitely to keep in mind, is how long it takes just to print all the pages and tape it all together. It's definitely a labor of love. So I've selected my fabric, a cotton sateen from Fabric Mart that was just $3 a yard. So yes, I love this fabric and I love the price even more. I'm starting to try and fabric shop just a little bit smarter, or basically with more intention. I really want to work on building up a vintage, historical, history bounding sort of wardrobe. And so I want to keep that in mind when I'm selecting my fabrics for purchase. I want things that are going to look good together and pieces that I can mix and match. And this lining is the fruits of me trying to be more thoughtful when I purchase fabric. I did not purchase these two fabrics at the same time or for the same purpose, but this lining fabric goes perfectly. I just went to my stash and found both of the things when I decided I was going to make this pattern. So yes, I see the convenience in it already. And so now you see me cutting the interfacing for pieces 1 and 13, which is the front of the bodice as well as the cuff. These pieces have to be interfaced, so that's what I'm doing now. I'm getting that all cut out and then I will get it ironed on. And the way you see me ironing it, the interfacing one, don't do it that way. Don't run your iron over it. Pick your iron up and then set it back down. And so now it's construction time. Starting with pieces 4 and 6, which are the back and the side back, I'm going to get these pinned in place so they can go to the sewing machine. They're princess seams, which I have definitely struggled with in the past. I will say with this make, this is one of the first times that I can say I see the improvement in my skills. Not a lot, but a few of the techniques that I do, I've done before, and that felt familiar and a chance to be better than last time. And so yes, I definitely can feel the skills starting to develop. With this pattern itself, I noticed that one of the trickiest things was when following the instructions, because there are so many different views for this top and they are so similar. So I noticed it was quite easy if I wasn't paying attention to be completing a step for another view. That's a tip that I would give for this pattern. Really just pay attention to what view you're doing. I'm not sure if someone needs that advice, but I definitely would have been happy to have received it. So disregard if you don't need to be told those things, but I sure did. So now we're going to pin the side front, which is piece number 3, to the uninterfaced front sections. And this is where that trick of clipping comes in that I've recently learned about princess seams. One of my subscribers actually shared that with me, and so they do instruct you to do that here. So clipping the front where necessary and baste, and then stitch from the lower edge to the upper large circles. And I later learned that those circles are indeed a big deal. They affect the way the neckline looks, and in the back, the way it does that square shape. So do not stitch through those circles. And I found it to be a huge time saver too, as I'm preparing the outer layer to prepare the lining at the exact same time. The instructions don't tell you to do this. They tell you to prepare the lining and the facing in a step that comes later, but experience that I'm gaining definitely tells me to do it all at the same time, and it is definitely a huge time saver. Now with those tricky princess seams completed, it is time to attach the front to the back at the shoulder as well as at the side seam. So I'm recording this voiceover after this top has been completely finished, and in hindsight, I am so pleased with the experience of making this top. Not just because of how it turned out, which it does turn out pretty well, and I was super proud of that, but for several other reasons. One, I got to see my skills really come together, and that definitely boosted my confidence as well as gave me motivation to sew more. But also because I kind of had a breakthrough with my own personal style, and I feel like I really got some direction for what I want to sew and how I want to dress on a daily basis. This is a completely modern pattern. It's McCall's Early Spring 2021, but I became aware that through fabric choice and the choice of the buttons, I got to make a top that looks almost historical. And I became so aware of how the different choices of the way I style it or the accessories or notions that I add can really change the look of a pattern. And so I definitely want to take modern patterns with vintage looking fabric and make something. I want to take modern fabric and apply it to vintage patterns and just really come up with a style that is all my own. As soon as I completed this top, I started looking through my stash of fabric as well as my patterns, and I came up with this. So I posted this over on my Instagram. It's So Drew, and this is a vintage pattern with a completely modern fabric. I already have it cut out, and look for that project to be coming real soon. So now I have the lining and the fashion fabric pinned together. They have to be stitched all around the edges and the bottom, and they say break stitches at the markings, and so I don't know if you could see it, but there's markings at some points, like you could see there. So they want you to break the stitches at those points, and then we're gonna turn it to the right side through an armhole. I turned it to the right side and gave it a good press. This is my first time trying it on. It fits a little weird here. I'm hoping the sleeves will kind of fix that, and once the buttons are added, it's a little snug. But I mean, it looks pretty good. Really kind of proud of it. Okay, with all of that done, it's time to work on the sleeves. And so I haven't yet transferred these markings for the pleats. So I'm gonna do that now and clip in my notches, and then we'll be able to get started on the sleeve. Oh, I didn't show you, there's also pleat marks down here at the bottom. I'm guessing that's how you get it to go into the sleeve cuff and look nice. I've actually put this off for a couple days because it was time for the sleeves and the pleats, and I was not feeling too comfortable with it, but I'm ready to tackle it now. And now we have the sleeve cap, which I've pleated, pressed, and basted, and it looks right. I think it's right. We're just gonna roll with it. And this is the bottom of the sleeve. So this has been pleated and pressed and pinned and basted as well, and it's gonna go into these sleeve cuffs. you will have one interfaced and one uninterfaced piece for each sleeve. And so you have to make the loops that will be the buttonholes. And after you cut the loops, you then have to baste them together 5/8 of an inch from the raw edge. Kind of wish I had done this by hand, but I did it by machine anyway. I did baste them to the sleeve cuff by hand. So you have to do that, and then on the interface sleeve cuff, fold it back and then trim the seam allowance, put it on top of the other piece, pin it in place, and then you're going to stitch all around the edges, leaving the top open so that way you can turn it to the right side. Before you turn it to the right side, you want to trim your seam allowance though. And then once you turn it and give it a good press, it should look like this. And then you're going to attach it to the sleeve, right sides together, but leaving that edge that you folded over, leaving it free. That will be the side that you slip stitch over the seam to hide the raw edges. And I did this with a needle and thread, and I had a lot of practice from a top I've done previously on this channel. So yes, and after that you attach the sleeve to the bodice and matching up the notches and the seams, and it fit in there pretty well. It wasn't a difficult thing. And so with that, there is nothing left to do but the finishing touches, which are a lot of buttons and a lot of buttonholes. But overall, this looks really good, and it does look modern meets vintage meets historical. And overall, I love this. I really love the buttons and the fact that I just found them in my stash. It was not something that was planned out or intentional, and it just worked. I love the sleeves. They're a tad short for my taste, but I seen where another person had made this top on Instagram, and hers were a little short too, so maybe that's the way it's intended to be. If I make this pattern again, I will make a few changes, but I love how I paired it with the ripped jeans to give it a super modern look that is definitely on my own. And so thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll see you in my next video that is soon and sure to come.